keep it
All right.
interesting for you.
We might kick it off. Morning, everyone. Great to see you all here. Nice to see some new faces. Lots of awesome things have happened over the last couple of weeks, not least of which is the launch of Next Play. And we've got Greg at the back there. Greg, hand up, please. Congrats, Greg. His co-founders are probably off doing their thing, I would hope, generating business. But great story. Greg and James and Chris have sort of formed up here at the Hub. All sort of settled on the coast over the last, in recent time, and have found very strong synergies and interests and created a new business called Next Play. Do you want to quickly tell us what Next Play is doing, Greg?
Sure. Well, it's an AI services play. We are a recruitment agency, but underneath we're building the technology to power what we're doing. So it's challenging in that we are already operating. We're servicing clients in real business while also doing the building. So it's not so much just focusing on just that, which has other challenges. But good in that we have a really fast feedback loop to develop these things and implement them right away. And then we get more time, and then we reinvest that in other areas. And based on what we get from that, eventually we're going to have some other products and services coming up. But right now it's really about just what we're doing and getting great results for our clients.
Fantastic. So it falls very much into the theme that we're going to be focusing on today with our guest presenter, Andrew Birt. I've got a couple of quick slides here. You know, we're in our week 3 of our agent sprint. I've got a link to this presentation, as always, the QR code and a tiny URL. If you want to jump onto this deck, which will connect you to Andrew's presentation, which has got lots of amazing stuff, as you're about to see. Just a kind of quick recap as to where we are and where we're going. This is week 3 of our 5-week sprint on AI agents. Week 4 next week is a build-a-thon. We're going to spend 2 hours on the tools building with some support available to you. Just really a dedicated 2-hour block where you can take the stuff you've been learning over the last few weeks. We'll set this up in such a way that, you know, it's a nice, comfortable area to work, and we'll have a few people around who can help you get unblocked on things that you need some help with. And then week 5 is going to be the show and tell, where we get to share things that we've been building through the sprint. We got a hell of a lot of value from the last one that we did at the end of last year, and I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone has built through that period. I've been saying that, you know, one of my sort of recommendations that we keep swimming upstream to the sense makers, people who can kind of help us understand where things are going in AI and who can help us cut through the noise. Aaron Levy is the founder of Box.com, one of the leading cloud platforms. Big focus on enterprise. There are a few customers in the room at Box.com. He's a really, really good sense maker on the AI side. Highly recommend following him. A couple of great podcasts that he's been on recently. If you're looking for a sense of future of work and future of the enterprise, Aaron's a great sense maker to follow. Once we get through this sprint, our next sprint is going to be on what I view as the second sort of key pillar that we should be focused on. It's kind of one about how do we utilize AI in terms of our own productivity and in terms of building products and services. And the second is obviously all about how do we get customers. And AI is also transforming how we get customers. So that second sprint is going to be all about how do we use AI to get customers? Marketing, content, lead gen, conversion, all that sort of stuff. So I haven't figured out exactly what the week-by-week proposition is going to be there, but a similar sort of thing, 4 or 5 week sprint, hands-on, using tools, learning new skills, with a focus on getting customers. And we've got some people who are doing really awesome stuff with AI in that space. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our special guest, Andrew Birt. Andrew is a serial founder. Unbeknownst to me, because we only met over the last few years, but I was a bidder on the Kickstarter project that really went viral. How long ago was that? 12 years ago now? Yeah. Andrew and his team founded a company called LIFX, LIFX, which was one of the very early connected home products. Some of you guys might have seen these products back in the day, smart globes, before they became something that you could just go and buy at Harvey Norman. They were a very novel thing that you could connect a light bulb to Wi-Fi and control it in interesting ways. So he's gone on to do lots of other things since then. He's also launched one of Australia's first startup accelerators down in Victoria, and since has been working, sort of bringing technology to the insurance sector across a range of interesting products and services, and more recently, really over the last couple of years, focused on how AI intersects with insurance. This is going to link in very much with what Greg just mentioned, that theme we've been talking about how do you super skill or 10x an existing role that you would say doesn't fall into a 10x category. It's just like a 1x category. How do you bring that 10x philosophy to roles that currently are much more sort of one-to-one leverage, effort in equals effort out, not effort in equals 10x output. So without further ado, Andrew Birt, please give him a big welcome.
Cool, thanks Chris. Thanks everyone for coming along today too. Yeah, we're through the floods and everything, and hopefully everyone had a fairly smooth drive here. Nice to see lots of familiar faces in the room too. So yeah, this is just a new pack that I put together fairly recently, so apologies if I turn around and read off the slides occasionally. Don't have it all committed to memory, but wanted to kind of give you a bit of an overview of what we're talking about today. The evolution of knowledge working, this concept of superstaffing and what is it, 3 ways to think about superstaffing. How do we superstaff ourselves? How do we superstaff our customers? And how do we superstaff the companies that we're building? So it's a kind of a founder-centric approach. And to borrow from Chris, I want to talk a lot about Cursor as a key tool for superstaffing, not just developing, but also there's different ways you can use Cursor. It's certainly a software development tool, but I think it's so much more, and Chris really got me thinking about that, and hopefully I've plenty of credit to him there. Bit about the customer opportunity, company building in the AI area, and time permitting, we'll build a voice agent with 11 labs. I won't labour this too much. Chris gave the introduction. LIFX was one of the first kind of startup companies that I founded that really kind of took hold. And in more recent years have been very insurance focused. I promise I won't make the presentation too insurancy. And this is across to the right here now with Cover, which is essentially a spin out. And I really like Greg's point about building the recruitment company and then building the tools for the recruitment company. And that's very much been our approach too. We're a small size brokerage, I would say, fairly niche. We're in the tech sector. We've only got 5 staff, but we're kind of just under the $1 million turnover annual recurring revenue at the moment. So it's a good little business. And from there, we've spun out this AI tool for the insurance industry. So it's kind of our test bed where we keep improving the product and building AI. But the bulk of this presentation is about Cover and how we're using AI and the concept of superstaffing with our business. This is a pretty obvious one in a lot of respects, but I kind of want to set the scene a little bit, just this evolution that we're in at the moment. We've been through the agricultural area, the industrial area, the information area, where the knowledge worker was king or queen, and certainly that, I think we're entering this new age now of artificial intelligence, and the superstaffed worker is the concept that we want to talk about today. So I think before we get into it too, when we look at AI, and we're all using it in the room, and there's lots of talk of what jobs are going to exist in the future, I think I want to emphasise the point that knowledge workers aren't really going away. I think AI is really taking off, but things like collaboration and people skills, spaces like this where we meet and get together and bounce ideas off each other, is super important. The creativity and inventiveness. I don't know if anyone's tried to write copy with ChatGPT. I think it's pretty variable results there, personally. The credentials, the duty of care. If you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're a engineer, you've got this duty of care to the customers. I think AI is a long way from replacing that. The emotional labour, caring about the outcomes. There's that famous story in Brisbane of the just trying to remember the name of the tunnel, one of the tunnels that was built, and they overestimated the traffic demands by about 95%. Does anyone? And then so it's kind of that that caring about the outcomes thing. I think the judgment and discernment, and we'll talk a lot about that today too, is certainly part of the human stack. Resource allocation, key decisions, people that hold budgets, these are all human things. Governance, managing companies, these are things that aren't going away. So, but as we all know, and we're doing this ourselves, the great augmentation is underway. There's this knowledge and skill augmentation that we're all engaging with on a daily basis. We're using these AI tools to go into areas that we previously weren't possible for us before. And I'll use myself as the guinea pig example. I've always been a commercialization, marketing, development person, certainly never been the developer. But I'm going to make the case now that you can be. And then all these other things that are happening too, like task multiplication. You can juggle multiple things at the same time. You've got this cross-domain capability, the lawyer that can code kind of scenario. Semi-autonomous workers and agents, and speed of creation and production, and exponential productivity. So these are all things that are the benefits we're deriving from AI use on a daily basis. And if we go a step further, and Chris shared a really good article recently, but a lot of people in the room might have read this from the founder of Anthropic, Dario Amodei, Machines of Love and Grace. Great big article about what does superintelligence mean? What could the future look like if we do achieve this superintelligence? And there's a key line in there, a country of geniuses in a data center. And this is the idea of parallelization, just almost superhuman intelligence available through an API, which is very exciting on the one hand, but a bit spooky on the other. So, as people, we need a way to keep up. And this is what we talk about when we talk about the concept of superstaffing. So combine what humans are good at, the collaboration, people skills, etc., the emotional labor, caring about the outcomes, with these new and emerging capabilities. So that's really what we're talking about. And different people have a different definition of superstaffing, but this is kind of how I'm thinking about it, what we're good at, what the AI is good at, and bringing those two together. And I think this creates really interesting opportunities. So firstly for ourselves, and we'll unpack that a bit, we'll talk to that. Secondly, our customers, and thirdly, when we're company building. If we first think about augmenting ourselves, lots and lots of familiar tools to many people in the room. Probably a lot of people are using a big percentage of them. But yeah, certainly if we look at kind of our knowledge and general skills, we've got OpenAI and Anthropic and DeepSeek and the traditional LLMs. We've got the design and the storytelling piece with Midjourney, Runway, Napkin's a really neat little tool for like doing workflow diagrams and things. So that's one that I've been using a little bit recently. Our ability to augment our memory. So we've got, meeting note takers are kind of an obvious example, but you do this 1 hour meeting and it remembers all the notes for you and gives you your tasks and your knowledge bases. And then we've got our ability to use code to solve problems. I'm starting to move away from calling those development environments and talk about them as problem solving. But obviously Cursor's the big one. A lot of people are talking about Windsurf, there's Replit, there's Climb. There's no shortage of tools. And our ability to augment our time and output. So we've got things like Claude computer use that are just in its infancy, Operator from OpenAI as well, whether from a prompt, you're telling the computer what to do and off it goes and takes actions on your behalf. 11 Labs is the one we're going to explore today, and a handful of others. But this idea that we're producing work, but also we're setting up these systems that are producing work is a really interesting part of it. So I just want to talk about a few quick demos of Cursor. This is going to be very familiar to a lot of people in the room. I'm imagining people spending hours and hours in here. But if you haven't, this is, Cursor's first screen. And this is where the magic happens. I think when I first saw the buzz about Cursor and the importance of it and why it was taking off, I couldn't really figure it out. It was kind of hidden here, so somewhat. But if you click this little agent tab, you've got your composer, and in your composer you can start doing prompts to the agent to take actions and to build things. And this is my GitHub. So as you can see, this was a new account actually, but it's a bit embarrassing, but to any developer in the rooms, it's probably got a long story history that is on the left of the screen, and mine starts in January. And I've kind of been joking that, 307 contributions in the last, or this year, but it's really Cursor has made those. I haven't written a single line of code. I'm just really using it on a daily basis and trying to build things that are fit for purpose in our company. I've got 2 followers on GitHub, so that's it's going well. And if we think about Cursor as the example, and we'll unpack this more, Chris said to me maybe a few weeks ago or even a couple of months ago, he's thinking about Cursor as more of this workbench for productivity. And at first I didn't really get it. I just thought, well, it's an IDE with a composer in it and it develops software. But it was a challenging thought, and it got me to think about it more and more and even reflect on the ways I was using it. And so we've got this kind of basic diagram that I put together of some of the ways I've been using it myself. And people in the room might be doing all kinds of other things as well. This is really just a bit of a mud map. But if we think about development as the obvious one, there's the web development, there's the UI, there's the UX design that you might have done in Webflow or in Figma or other tools previously. No shortage of WYSIWYG web development tools. There's rapid prototyping, there's front-end development, there's back-end development, and even just separating those two out deliberately. So you could develop something almost end-to-end in the front end before giving it over to a back-end team. You don't necessarily have to build a full-stack application in one go. And in fact, for me personally, I've found a lot more progress recently when I've just been concentrating on front-end because I've got a little back-end team, and it's just allowed me to kind of build things at a much quicker speed without breaking and dependencies and setting up Superbase and MCPs. And there's a lot more complexity that goes with back end. But once you've got your front end, you have somewhat of a product. So we challenge ourselves a bit more. We can move a bit further down the stack and we think about marketing. We're building a tech company, we're building a startup. We need a product pipeline. We can't just build one product necessarily. So I'm going to talk a little bit about and show some examples of how we're using it at Hubber to build a product pipeline. There's sales enablement as well. We've all been in through meetings and you get towards the end of the meeting and the customer says, how much is this going to cost? And then you invariably go away and have to do a proposal. I want to show you an example how I think we can speed that up. Content marketing, business modeling, inquiry forms that link through to Zapier. There's a whole range of things we can do. ROI calculators, internal portals, finance operations, and a lot more. So I certainly won't go through all of this today, but just as a bit of a way to challenge ourselves to think, what can we build that are customer-facing tools, and what can we build that speeds us up as we build our companies? So I want to give this example. Who here is a Webflow fan at all in the room? A few show of hands. Does anyone have a massive disliking of Webflow as well?
Love-hate relationship.
Yeah, love-hate relationship. I would say I'm exactly the same. I've been using it for years now. I think it builds good quality stuff. But ultimately, it's still moving boxes around, lots of clicking, and you get to these points where you're like, I don't know what to do here, and things like that. So I think being able to develop our own websites, particularly from scratch, is a really interesting piece of the puzzle. So I'll go through that in a sec, but I'll show you the next one. There's the front end and application development. And a bit of a way I'm thinking about it now is almost building templates. So, you've almost want to build a particular product. And on the right here, this is a knowledge-based product that we're building for the insurance sector. So owners of insurance companies can, set up their email templates, HR templates, training materials. They can basically, create a knowledge base. And so this product, I've only got this to the front end stage as well. But now when we sit down with enterprise clients like Steadfast and the like, we can show them these types of products and say, we could build this for you fairly quickly. So it's a way of, not just spending a couple of days building something like this versus committing to a product too early before you've got buy-in from key stakeholders and things. So I want to talk about it as a prototyping tool. And then certainly full stack applications are possible. Lots of people in the room will be much better at this than me, but I want to show you an example of something that I've built recently that I think is quite fun using 11 Labs. And then we'll do this as the demo at the end. It's a a voice assistant that you can talk to, and this one's specifically for the insurance sector. So I'm going to go back a bit and we'll just have a quick look at some of these products. So I haven't pushed this to production yet, but this is a website that I've been working on, and there's plenty more tweaks that we want to do. But just these little kind of custom animations, the little get started button here, you've got your information, you can click on any of our products, so you can select those. And when you submit that form, it comes through Zapier on a webhook, and so then I've got the customer information in our database, and we put it into our CRM and trigger custom workflows and actions from here. And you can use tools like Tally and other form builders, but they're so inflexible, and I think the ability to code your own inquiry forms like this is really interesting. So this is where we start to stray into the territory of, yes, we're building a website, but we're creating an asset for our company. And so this is just a simple example there.
You did this all in Cursor?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. And really just like prompting away. Change the padding, change the headings, make this color, import this button. One tip I would say is finding nice components online. So there's really nice component libraries like Magic UI and a bunch of others. But if you find something you like, just grab the code and bring that in. But
what about design?
What's that, sorry?
What about the design of the UI? What did you do with that? How did you do that?
That was all just prompting as you go. Wow. So instead of the old way, like I'd always have just Figma and I'd have this predetermined idea, it was literally starting with a really shell of a design that was really ugly, no colours, no headings, just like this one-shot type design that Cursor would do. And then you start taking that approach. You're like, all right, put my logo in the top left corner, change this button, make this purple, I want this hex code. You just talk to it like you're sitting there with a developer.
Is it a static app or is it like Next.js or?
It's Next.js, yeah.
And so did you tell it to do these things or did it suggest?
No, I said at the start. So I would say, I want to build a modern Next.js Tailwind website effectively as the base. And I want to create a bit of a template that looks like a modern SaaS. And so it kind of spat out version 1. I would say, but with no copy kind of not that impressive copy, and then just kind of work through it. So this is probably all up, I would say, to get the front end right, probably spent 6 to 7 hours, I would say, going back and forward and talking to it. So it is labour intensive, and certainly Webflow, you could spin it up much more quickly. But now that we've got this template, I feel like, okay, cool, we can really iterate on this and build from this.
If you had to guess, how many prompts did you think you went through in those 6 hours to get this?
That's a good question. 100, I would say, roughly.
It's pretty wild that you just described it being labour intensive to have spent 6 hours. Get this?
Yeah.
He's pretty lazy.
Spot on. It's really creative. It's a different form of creativity than sitting there with a Figma or moving the boxes and the pixels around. I totally agree. I think it's, and I'm only really just getting started with this as well. Like, I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means, and I've always kind of spent hours in Webflow, but I think moving to this now, I can see pretty soon getting to a point where you wouldn't do this for every project, I would say, necessarily, but if it's your main thing and you're building a new company and you really want fine-tuned control over what you're doing, I'd recommend this, but Webflow's still certainly got its place. But if we get kind of further into it, you can keep doing these little sections, and this is we'll talk about this later, but for no reason at all. You can do that. Certainly couldn't do it with Webflow.
Your developer would hate you if you made that request to them.
Oh, that's exactly right. Make it pop. I like it. I think it's kind of, I don't know, I just have enjoyed the process. And I think you can add other things to it as well. So I've got this blog here that's not looking great yet, but I've got more work to do here. But the blog, it's a headerless blog importing Sanity, which is, if anyone's used, it's a Next.js blog builder in the past, but probably this was almost going a bit too far because I could have used another thing like Ghost or something that was a bit easier to set up and pre-configure and then link to it. And I made a rod for my own back and thought I'll incorporate this into my main site. And it worked, but that was the thing that probably took longer than everything else. So it's almost, I think the thing that's taught me a little bit is, work out where you want, how far do you want to go down the rabbit hole. And I think I perhaps went a little bit too far with this, but at least I've got it now set up and things like that. And the other interesting thing with this as well, when we talk about this sales enablement idea and Cursor being a sales enabler. So my co-founder and I with Cover, we're sitting on all these calls, and particularly him, he's on the sales side. So he'd meet with insurance brokers, meet with different companies, talk to them. Inevitably, it would come back, all right, we want a proposal. Cool. He's a great sales guy. He's not so good at proposals, and it would just basically be another thing on my plate. So I was like, oh, great, I've got to spend time in Figma building this proposal based on the meeting that I wasn't there for, and et cetera, et cetera. We've got all these pricing tables internally, but I just started to think, well, can we be a bit more transparent about this? Can we pull this up in a meeting? So if I'm not available and he's just in the meeting, he can talk to a company and say, okay, cool, you want our assistance product, you want our policy comparison, and you want our app. And so, you could select number of users, and then you could toggle annually versus monthly. And it just enables him and I as well to really kind of quickly on a single call demonstrate the products that we've got to customers, demonstrate the per user licensing model that we use, and to give them a quote. And invariably we'll improve on this quote for them. It's more just giving them if anyone's been in media sales or things like that before, you've got your rate card. And so this is our rate card, but we'll certainly improve it further for particular clients. But I think this is this concept of sales enablement through Cursor as well. So plenty more we could do here, but I just thought that was kind of a fun one.
So sorry, if you hit request quote on there, it will generate it, send it out?
That's a good question. So it just gives them the ability to put their name, number, any additional notes, and then submit it through to us. Or download that as a PDF. I haven't got that fully working yet either, so that's not submitting. The page on the front submitting, but that one's not just yet. But I think I'll do a similar webhook for that one, pull that into Zapier, and it's like a quote workflow.
Got it. It'll build on the template, you'll have it.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll just build a delay in it so they feel like it's custom made. Fire it off.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. You've got really unlimited control of that kind of stuff. So that's that one. I'll go into, let's see, example number 2. This is 1. 2 was more of our, let's see if this is running locally. Cool. Oops. Yeah, so this one is more of a templated approach I was talking about earlier. This is the templated front end for this knowledge management tool that we're building. Again, still somewhat of a prototype, but the general idea is an insurance broker can use this to set up what they call their preferred markets. So if you call up an insurance broker and you ask them about professional indemnity, they'll have all kinds of markets that they prefer going to and preferred contacts and things. And a lot of the time this either exists in their head or maybe a spreadsheet, but definitely not a SaaS tool. And so just giving them the ability to describe which markets they like here, and then as they get further into it, they can select their preferred underwriter. So they might say LAUW, and they might say, I don't know, Lloyd's. And so just being able to build these lists and move these up and down is something that we've been working on here. And then thinking through different subscription ways as well. So you might say, we want this product to be very self-serve, so it just sits online, people can sign up for it, but then they determine, are they the admin for their organisation or not? And if they're not, they can just invite the admin by email there, or if they are, they can proceed through and set up payments that way. So you can kind of, just gives you more flexibility on your business rules. And our case is a bit weird because, if we get through this a little bit further, a lot of insurance companies want to pay on invoice. And typically if you import your SaaS, your Stripe SDK, you're not going to have this capability. So just being able to build these things on your front end is really cool. So it's another thing I like about having this control. What else is there?
Andrew, is this cursor again, or is this humans?
This is all cursor as well.
All cursor as well. Amazing.
It's just a bit of a hobby as much as anything. Like I think I was always the non-technical person, and then fell in love with Figma, particularly in lockdown and COVID. Started going on, I want to be the Figma guy. And then you hit these limitations with Figma obviously, and passing things across. And I tried to learn front-end development so many times and spend time in JavaScript, and I just wasn't good at it. I'm kind of an extrovert, so I'm terrible at putting myself in a room for a long period of time. But I think there's a fair bit of instant gratification with this, and to the point about 6 hours being labour intensive. I think you get these feedback loops where you're seeing things come to life and the pixels change and you're moving boxes around. So I think it's quite a rewarding process.
Andrew, do you know which model it's using?
Yeah, so this is Claude Sonnet 3.5 predominantly, but 3.7 is even better at UI. So the main problem with 3.7 is almost like there's so much demand on the model at the moment that you get these bottlenecks and slowdowns. And so I often switch back to 3.5 just purely for speed. It starts to get context as well. So when I built that, working away at the SaaS tool that we've seen here, and I've just taken it in Figma and mocked it up and created this and then dropped this file back in. But this website, this was a one-shot. So I'd been working fully on the thing, and I said, okay, now we need a login and now we need the website. And it just went, and I even said, incorporate the benefits from the product into the copy. And it did that. So I was like, oh, geez, okay, that's cool. The speed of just sitting down and doing one project after one project after one project, you iteratively learn mistakes and patterns and things that are changes. So I'm not a developer, but I was, had this cause problem that just kept recurring for me. I was like, why isn't this thing deploying? Why can't I see it? Why isn't the data passing from the webhook into Zapier? I've done everything right, and in my Slack appears name, date of birth, etc., without the data. And I was like, what is going on? And it wasn't, you got to the point of like talking to not just Cursor, but then you've got ChatGPT open and you're like trying to problem solve basically. And eventually it got to this point where I was like, well, could it be that I'm deploying from a Vercel link? It's not on localhost. Is that causing the issue? And it was like, oh yeah, it is. It's a cause issue. You need to and it just did that for me. So the next time you're developing a project, you hit that issue, then you know the solve as well. So it's not exactly what you're saying, but I know exactly what you mean. It's this compounding effect of the knowledge that you could discreetly build into the product, but it's also what's in your head as well. So I think, it's a really fun time, and that's why I think the more people lean into it. And this product, I did say this was fully front end actually, but I forgot it does have a Superbase integration through an MCP, so you can log in, create new users, all that stuff as well. So I end up just pushing this up into GitHub, talking to our development team and just saying, okay, I've built this, and they say, oh, fucking something else. And then we kind of, go back and forward and prioritize and put things in the queue. So, this is the, that, but predominantly this is a front end type product. And then I just want to show you this little product. Hopefully this works. I'm calling this a full stack, but it's very basic. There's no login system yet. There's, it's just sitting up there on a Vercel link. But this is using the 11 Labs assistance, which I think is really cool because in 11 Labs, and we'll look at this, but you can build an agent quite easily. So, 11 Labs is particularly good at voice, but it's got the ability to upload knowledge files. So you have this RAG as well as the conversation. And what else have you got in there? You've got your master prompt, so you can kind of say, in this case, I've said you are a co-pilot for insurance brokers. You have the following knowledge base. Insurance brokers will ask you these following questions. Your job is to superstaff the junior broker. And broking is just one example. We'll go into this more, but every job whether it's accountants, lawyers, doctors, has this massive knowledge base. As experienced practitioners, you've got a lot of that in your head. But for juniors, learning on the job is pretty tricky, and insurance broking is one of those. There is a fair bit to know, and junior brokers certainly don't know it all. But let's see if this works for us. Let's see, we'll try once more and then...
Hi and welcome to the New Broker's Assistant. I'm a personal assistant designed for Australian
Usually
insurance.
I can interrupt. Oh yeah, I can. There we go. Let's see. Well, it says listening.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Sentient. Let's do a smaller example. We're seeing a client that's got a fintech. What are some key questions I should ask them? Who are the good markets for fintech in Australia?
Let me help you with fintech insurance placements. Key questions you should ask your fintech client. What specific financial technology services products do they provide? Do they handle or have access to customer financial data? Do they integrate with banking systems or payment processing? What is their annual revenue and number of customers? Do they have any regulatory licenses or compliance requirements? As for markets that specialise in fintech risks in Australia, based on the directory information, some key underwriters include Dual Australia, strong in financial lines and tech, Newline Australia, experienced in financial institutions, London, Australia Underwriting, LADW, handles complex financial risks, Brooklyn Underwriting, active in technology and financial sectors, Woodina Underwriting, specialises in professional and financial risks. Would you like me to provide more specific details about coverage considerations for fintech companies or elaborate on any of these insurers' appetites?
No, just tell me why a fintech would need professional indemnity insurance.
A fintech needs professional indemnity insurance primarily because they provide professional, financial and technological services that clients rely on. If their technology fails, has errors or gives incorrect financial advice, information, it could cause significant financial losses to their clients. For example, if their payment processing platform has a glitch that causes duplicate charges to customers, or their algorithm provides incorrect investment recommendations, or if their software miscalculates financial data leading to business losses. All these scenarios could result in claims against the fintech company. Professional indemnity would also protect them against claims of breach of professional duty, technology failures or errors, data security breaches, negligent coding or system design, unintentional intellectual property infringement. Would you like me to explain some real claim scenarios or discuss specific coverage features that are important?
Sounds like he's getting tired.
Geez, the voice is amazing, Andrew.
That voice is phenomenal.
Andrew, can I ask you a very quick question, please?
Working in the US, so that's very
I'm curious to know what would have happened if, when it recommended the questions to you, which were good questions, if you were to ask it, what is the value to the customer of me asking that question? And what is the value to me of me asking that question? It doesn't matter whether you've built that into this, but can you build that level of detail, which if you're going to be superstaffing junior professionals, say in my space BD professionals, these questions are critical in terms of this being a AI-based learning platform, coaching platform, etc. What are your thoughts in regards to that?
That's a really good question, and it would handle that scenario really well because it's effectively all you're doing is you've got, in this instance, Claude just sitting there in the background and you're just creating a conversational pathway between yourself and Claude and the prompt and knowledge base. But it's probabilistic, not deterministic. So it's not like the old machine learning days where you're basically going, yep, that's your tree, and follow that tree. And if it doesn't follow the tree, it says, I don't know what I'm doing.
Could you give us a glimpse into the knowledge bit, Andrew, just so, because obviously that curation of the knowledge is what the real power of this thing is. So
100%.
No, it's a good question. And so basically, you can put anything you like in there, to be honest. So in this example, with 11 Labs, you kind of go and you create your assistant, you give it a name, and you give it a master prompt, and basically you contextualize it. And then in that knowledge base, you can put anything you like, to be honest, PDFs, website links. You can generate your own content. Like I like to do, say, synthetic content. So you could almost even in a sales example, you could almost use deep research through ChatGPT to say, create me the ultimate sales handbook, and then upload that into there once you've checked it over and stuff. So, yeah, there's that combination between publicly available. You can put your put your own thoughts together in PDF and pop it in. But really, you can be as creative as you like with that knowledge base. And I think to Greg's point earlier too, that context stuff does matter, that context window. It's like any RAG product. If you put too much in the context and too much into the knowledge base, you'll start to see a drop-off in the quality of answers. And so when I'm assistant building now, I tend to think about assistants with quite specific purposes. If you make them too broad, and you say you're an assistant that can handle marketing, sales, finance, logistics, etc., and then give it a massive knowledge base, it's going to give poor quality answers.
Yeah, and it's either why, or it's why and what, or it's what and how. But the what if perhaps will get way too complicated.
Exactly, that's it. I think it just starts to blow through the context window too quickly. But this one, everything that was saying there was pretty much bang on from an insurance point of view. And I'm not the insurance guy in the team, so we have real insurance brokers, and this is quite handy for me because I'm kind of like, they'll talk about stuff and I'll be like, mergers and acquisitions, liability insurance, I don't know what that is exactly, and what does that cover, and then it's really good at that kind of stuff. So I think for general purpose things, sales is certainly something you could say, objection handling, introductions, rapport building, you could come up with any kind of things you like and then put that in. So and obviously, you can build the login and things like that with this. I haven't got a transcript working yet, but the idea of being able to have a real-time chat appear on the right-hand side using a different API like DeepGram does granola and those types of services. So yeah, there's lots you could expand on with this, but
what are you using for your voice input? So you're using 11 Labs to produce the assistant response, but what were you using for your voice input to sort of sending it to Claude, and then is that going to 11 Labs for the response?
Yeah, 11 Labs is handling that end to end. So we'll get to we'll build one and we'll do exactly that. But you can test it within the 11 Labs platform. So you really do everything on their side, like create it, knowledge base, set it all up, and they've even got their own SDK. So all I really did with this was pull down their SDK, start working on the UI and improvements and changes. But to build this itself wasn't a couple of hours kind of work at most, kind of thing. So
did you format your information in any specific format, or just?
Not really, no. I think we've got, because this is a derivative of another product we've got in market, we've got a broker's assistant that's chat-based, that's been in market. We've got 300 brokers using that. So that's been in market for about 4 months or so. And so I guess we've iteratively come up with the ideas over time of like what makes that knowledge base perform well. And then this was quick and easy because I was like, I'll just copy all the files in our existing knowledge base into this thing. But for whatever reason, even though I'm using Claude in our main assistance product, and then I'm using Claude through 11 Labs with the same knowledge base, and this gives me better results. And I don't know why. So there's bizarre stuff going on.
It might be, there's so many things. It could be temperature, they could be injecting a prompt.
That's spot on. It's it's been fascinating. So this is and we've just kind of, insurance broking is not a particularly technical market either. So if you showed this to a web developer and he said, I'm going to build you a chat assistant for a web developer, I think the bar is much higher. But for non-technical audiences, this is kind of, it certainly wows them. Yeah, I think it certainly fit for purpose. So we'll come back to the demo. I'll go back to the presentation.
And whilst you're doing that, all of my enterprise level clients are calling in their vendors like myself and asking, what are you going to deliver in this space? And that's mainly why I'm here.
Yeah.
Money literally queued up waiting to be spent on this type of solution.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, that's why there's so much opportunity. And really that's what the second half of the program is all about. It's kind of saying, okay, here's what we can build, and then it's talking about the business opportunities, because I think you're exactly right. If you look at, say, I'll pick up roughly where I left off, but yeah, this kind of the joke, the rise of the vibe coder. All you're missing is some confetti when they click that button. I swear I'd built mine before I read that meme, and then I was like, oh god, that's me. But I think this, vibe coding, and we talk about it as a bit of a meme and a bit of a joke as well. But this Andrew Birt was the head of AI at Tesla, self-driving tech. So yeah, I won't obviously read this all, and lots of people in the room would have seen this article as well, but there's just a few kind of call outs from this, him talking about, he was basically came up with the term vibe coding, and he's talking about, it's possible to just let the LLM do its thing. When I get an error message, I just copy them into comment, which usually fixes it. And some of the LLMs can't fix a bug, so I just work around it or ask for random changes until it goes away. So that made me feel a lot better about myself, because I'm like, oh, that's what I do. But yeah, you kind of just, if a really competent, one of the world's best developers is saying, this isn't a reasonable approach, then I don't think we need to feel bad about ourselves if we're doing this and learning and experimenting. I think I would kind of say there are some limitations, obviously, and some guardrails around it. It's not just throwaway code, but I think it's important to know your own limitations. Like, I'm working in insurance, it's data heavy, it's privacy centric. I'm basically in a lot of instances building prototypes in Figma. I'm not building production products. And so I think it's important to say, know where you sit, have a good team around you as well, and you might be that developer already, so you won't be as heavily reliant on a team as I am, but you've got to do a lot of this stuff yourself. But just taking the security seriously, just because you can build something really quickly doesn't necessarily mean that should move into production and have client data in it straight away. I think there's pipelining products and being really, you can be bullish with that and hide them on Vercel and your own links and just use them internally. But then there's kind of coming up with a bit of a mature way to go vibe coding, vibe-driven development. And this is the other example that probably a lot of people in the room have seen too. This Levelzio, I don't even know what his actual name is, but he's building a massive multiplayer flight sim game at the moment. Just vibe coding it himself, and he's got, I think he had 22,000 active flyers on the game last night. And he's selling sponsorships to the game, and you can see one there. They're spending $5,000 a month to buy their sponsorship spots, and he's got 80,000 recurring revenue or something like that for this product. He's building it in public. He's having fun. He's engaging with the community. So yeah, it's such a cool, and there's lots of other people popping up doing it as well. So it's a really creative time as well. Like, mine's a bit B2B SaaS is probably not the most exciting example, but yeah, like if you've got games or if you. Even if you wanted to sit with the kids and build games together and stuff, like, I haven't done that with my kids yet, but that's something I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm like, oh, that could be really fun. I teach them a little bit about, just kind of what could be done and creative and fun exercise. So I think we're really just getting started at what's possible. And then this idea of the pipeline as well. So we've got a range of products with Cover that we're building, and I've kind of, I've got the website, we've got the voice assistant. The two products in the middle, policy comparison and the assistants, are our live products that we've got hundreds of users on at the moment. I didn't build those, don't worry. Our real team built those, and we've got an app in development with our real team. But the knowledge management, we've got a content management system and a very early prototype of a CRM. I'm kind of calling those templated designs, because it's really just, I've built a bit of a front end, bit of a template, bit of what's possible. And for example, that CMS product there, the main insurer that we work with is in market for a CMS at the moment. And they've got pretty decent budget, so I've just run through our prototype and how we think about it. And pretty much straight away, they're like, yep, we're in, we'll give you this project. So we've got to work out how to resource it and team-wise and stuff, but just allows you to really quickly shorten that sales cycle, because you can build things that are very fit for purpose. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think the super staffing opportunity is massive. So many things that could be done. Mine's little patch is just insurance brokers at the moment, but you name it, any white collar profession, lawyers, accountants, doctors, engineers, industrial engineers, whatever it may be. And then diving further into the niches as well, like, maybe don't just think about engineers, like could you build a platform for mechanical engineers, or civil engineers, or you could even go further and further into the niche. And I think this is where the really big opportunities are, because the big traditional players like Salesforce and, I don't know, if you talk about building, you talk about Buildcore and all the big high-level SaaS companies have probably, in many cases, neglected the niches, or certainly the niches within niches. So there's some really, really interesting opportunities here. I think if someone says, I'm building the leading Copilot platform for chemical engineers, that would excite me a lot more than someone saying I'm building that for engineers. So I think it's that getting specific, getting really targeted, addressing a sector that's been long neglected, I think is a massive opportunity. And for us, insurance is huge. There's underwriters, there's claims, there's all kinds of teams, but we've really zeroed in on insurance brokers. There's 1 million insurance brokers roughly around the world. It's very difficult for them, and if they are, they're archaic, and no one's really purpose-built stuff for them. So that's our kind of niche within a niche. And maybe you wouldn't have focused on that previously, but I think you can get more niche about the way you do things now. This is where we talk about competition as well, because if everyone can build something, if everyone's a builder, is every single market going to get more and more competitive? And I think it will. And so I want to kind of talk a little bit about that. But lots of people would have seen this one before. This guy, Clayton Christensen, wrote Jobs to be Done and the Jobs to be Done framework, which pops up a lot in startup circles, unpacking someone's job and working out what are the functional things that they do with their job on a day-to-day basis, what are the social and emotional aspects of their job, and removing barriers. What obstacles could the product remove? So, as I was saying, I've never been a developer, but Cursor removes a big obstacle for me, and that I can communicate more quickly with my team and build more things. So, and Canva's like that for design as well. Canva's success, everyone wants to be a designer, but very few people are good designers, but Canva certainly democratises that. So lots of ways to break this down, and so much more to talk about with this. But in general, I think if you're building, and you're saying, all right, we're going to build something for accountants, you might not be an accountant and you might not necessarily have to be, but it's having that understanding, deep understanding of what's their job, what's their pain points, what's the emotional parts of their job, what are the barriers that they experience, and developing that customer empathy and a Jobs to be Done framework, I think, is super important, because if you get a superstar professionals and give them new tools, you have to understand what they're doing. So, I think that's kind of a bit about it. User testing, product pipeline, make sure you're solving real pain points, I think. And then I think this is a kind of a non-obvious one, and it's not a tech example, but give them something to believe in. I think if everyone is competing for the same customer set, and it will get more competitive, that if you have a brand, you have a mission, you have a purpose, I think you stand a much better chance. So I love this Tony's Chocolonely brand. Actually, Phoebe, it's from your home part of the world.
Very proud of this one.
Yeah.
It's a great chocolate too.
It is amazing. It's a great chocolate, great mission. And if anyone's familiar with the story, it was the whole investigative journalist basically writing about the chocolate industry and how bad it was. And he followed the major corporations went digging deep, and then they responded saying, well, we're going to address those concerns. And years later, they hadn't. And then this investigative journalist went, well, I'm going to create my own chocolate company. And it's been a massive, massive success. And I think, a big part of that is obviously there was these inherent problems with the industry. The big guys were lazy, and even though the investigative journalist was hot on their trails and they said they were going to change, they didn't change. And sometimes to make change happen, you've got to do it yourself. And that's why I love this example. It's kind of, not just making chocolate, it's solving a problem. It's this whole, empowering the farmers where the chocolate comes from, and the whole mission and the purpose. And they give back millions and millions of dollars to these farmers in Western Africa. And I think, this is an extreme example, but so many startups, and even having tools like Cursor, we can get in this mindset of on this feature runway. Let's new feature. And maybe that's not it. Maybe, creating a brand is equally as important. I think you have to have feature parity, and you have to have good elements to your product, but even more important in many cases, build a great brand and something that people can believe in. Just in the interest of time, I'll whip through this. Is Cursor the fastest growing SaaS company ever? Possibly yes. And to your point around the DIY, I think this audience of prosumers is huge. Revenue by employee is the new gold standard. So Mistral, like 105 million per employee, which is just nuts. And the gold rush in AI tools. So empowering the builders is the big opportunity of the day, and certainly that's why so much VC capital is pouring in, so much interest is pouring in. Huge companies are going to build overnight for that DIY reason. Prosumer tools that enable people to build their own things is a massive, massive market. When we're talking about the vertical landscape as well, I think, these are if we go back a step, these are the picks and shovels, but I think it's more than just picks and shovels. I think it's this vertical AI, in all kinds of segments and all kinds of areas. And I think the DIY opportunity fades a little bit too in fintech and insurtech in regulated environments. So, you might be able to, coding your own challenger bank would be difficult. Building your own, licensed regulated product and certainly insurable is another thing. Legal as well. These tools, because you're super staffing, you do have that indemnity responsibility. The models, we're talking about co-pilots, agents, AI-enabled services. So, you don't have to pick a lane necessarily, like in our case, we're just focusing on insurance brokers, but we're building co-pilots for them. We're not really building agents yet, I would say, but we're kind of almost. And we're building AI-enabled platforms. So you could pick one, you could pick a mix, you can have a different product strategy. And then this is one that we talk about quite a bit, and Chris would have touched on this too. The idea is that with vertical software, people are buying not just the output of the software itself, but in many cases the output of that industry. So the services industry dwarfs, the legal industry, for example, so much bigger than the legal software industry. But increasingly, as products become more like agents, will people pay the agent directly to do things for them rather than pay the law firm that's using an agent? So there's this interesting shift happening at the moment. I think when there is a duty of care, when there is liability, when there is indemnity attached to that role, I think those instances super staffing works better. But in some industries, maybe going direct to customer works really well and trying to capture a piece of the services level. So I certainly don't have all the answers. I'm just kind of a student following this bouncing ball as it goes.
So you think there'd be like brokerages for agents that may have some indemnity insurance behind the agent itself? Have you just talked to that?
Possibly. Yeah.
So you just get your LLM agent to talk to its LLM agent, and it's like, okay, you've got an indemnity for these actions, and it's a fee.
Fascinating. I think the speed of the technology will be there. Will the credentialing be there? It's almost like, if you want to be a solicitor or a lawyer, you've got to do the articles and, and then you've got to go to the Supreme Court and swear in and all that stuff and be credentialed as a lawyer to give legal advice effectively. Can we get the platforms to a point where they're credentialed and things like that too?
Law, that's the legal aspect, which would take a lot longer, give it 5 years.
Exactly, that's kind of what I'm thinking, yeah. I think these certain roles hidden behind these credentials, and maybe they'll never go away, these credentials as well. I'm starting to think, could you ever imagine a scenario where they admit an AI barrister to the bar? Maybe. And if they do, that profession is going to change dramatically. But I'm kind of at the moment operating on the assumption that credentialing is a fair way away. A little bit about putting these tools to work across your company. Many of you will be doing this already. You're already using these tools to accelerate yourself. And then I think make it part of the hiring process as well. When you're company building, not just engineers, full teams need to kind of be super skilling or super staffing themselves, having a growth mindset. This is now table stakes. You don't want to have kind of this team and, a big percentage of your team like, we don't really like AI, we don't use it. I think you're going to get kind of quickly out-competed. And then the new modalities create these new opportunities. So, traditional SaaS, you don't talk to it, it doesn't use vision, it doesn't have tools, it doesn't create action. So every time a new modality or a new thing gets unlocked, then that creates a new way to deliver value. And a lot of this can happen in parallel. You can get things to do things. And just to the competition point as well, we've talked quite a bit about this, but I think, yeah, easier for new entrants, the switching costs are lower, easier for customers to DIY, it's a continual feature race, but you know, a lot of these business principles that exist in the current world will apply for a long time. I think, you know, like still creating an ecosystem I think is really interesting, because if someone's built a standalone tool and you've built a suite of tools and you've got single sign-on and they've got their data in your platform, that's a moat. And similarly with network effects, if you get something to market first, like the flying example, the guy who's built the flying game, if you or I build a flying game tomorrow and we've got one user, the guy with 22,000 users is probably going to beat us to market. So network effects still are really important. Your audience, your distribution, you know, Mr. Beast comes up with his own product versus us, you know, he might be able to get a fair bit more reach than perhaps we could overnight. So, you know, cultivating an audience is, I think, is really good asset. It's certainly a skill. I've never been great at it, but as you can see from my GitHub. But yeah, I think that's certainly something that people could. And then case studies, you know, in the insurance world, we're collecting heaps of case studies at the moment about how people are using it, why they're using it, who else is using it. So when you're in the sales meetings, you can demonstrate that it's not just a product, it's got a community of users behind it. So all these things, I think the DIY factor is a very big risk, but I don't think it's a showstopper. I think you can still build a really big company in the prosumer age by catering to everyone else. Yeah, we've probably run out of time for this.
Let's do it next week at the Buildathon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, perfect. The only thing I would say about that is just if anyone wants to Google 11 Labs custom agent builder, if you just Google that, it launches you into that product and it's super easy to use and fun, and it'll be up and running in no time. So yeah, that's it.
Big hand for Andrew. All right, folks, that ran a little bit over, but there was great engagement, lots of chat. Barbecue upstairs. I'm sure there'll be plenty of snacks ready to go now. Next week, Buildathon, book it in. And then the following week, we'll do the show and tell. And then we'll get into how we tap into some of the things Andrew shared with us about getting customers. So great, you've built something. How are we going to get some customers? But thanks a million for taking the time to prep that and share that with us. Really, really awesome. Thank you. Thanks.